Who are the best options for your fantasy football waiver wire ahead of week 4 across positions? What wide receivers and running backs can help you most in the near future? It's time to break it down right here, right now, as we get another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Come to the site now. We've got your waiver wire advice, the rankings across positions that you can check out. Here, I'm going to dish out some recommendations for you ahead of week 4. This is for guys that can give you immediate help, and right away, we're going to look at some wide receivers and running backs that are emerging, and that'll be the main focus this week. We also have a few tight ends, quarterbacks, and streaming defenses on the radar for week 4. So we'll get into all of that. We'll start with the wide receivers. There's a ton out there. So if you're struggling at wide receiver, just need some depth at that position, there's plenty available no matter what size your league is and no matter what format, from standard to full PPR. So we'll get into those first, our wide receivers. Then we'll look at running backs and tight ends. Some good help there as you're struggling, I'm sure, at certain spots at the flex and beyond. And then look at the quarterbacks. So there's still some help out there. Another one goes down here in week 3 with Mac Jones having a high ankle sprain. So another option off the board here. And we'll see how we can adjust and improve here in 2 QB and super flex leagues, as well as provide depth in 1 QB leagues. So we'll get into all that on today's show. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, it is time to get into these wide receivers, and we'll start in Green Bay. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Romeo Doubs. We were in love with Romeo Doubs, however you want to say his last name. He is the buzzworthy sleeper from the preseason that's now paying dividends. Now, it took a few breaks here for this to happen. And that's what happens in fantasy football. Injuries create opportunity for talented players all the time. Now, looking at the guys ahead of him, Sammy Watkins ended up on injured reserve. Christian Watson, he was drafted as a rookie ahead of Doubs. He is in trouble here with his injury. So both of those guys did not play in week 3 against the Buccaneers. Al Lazard and Randall Cobb were their other healthy wide receivers. Cobb is just the veteran slot guy. Lazard is the big red zone threat. He scored in 2 weeks, but Doubs also scored. He caught all 8 of his targets there. He was very active for Aaron Rodgers, very trustworthy all over the field. So Romeo Doubs just needed that breakout game, that trust game with Aaron Rodgers. It definitely came here in the matchup against the Buccaneers. So tough matchup. He comes through here, gets a touchdown as well, scores like Lazard did in the game. So Romeo Doubs is in a great spot here. I don't think they're going to have a true number 1 between him and Lazard, but I think you have most trusted receivers here. No Watkins available for a while. Christian Watson was already behind in the offseason program with his injury, so he's not coming through here. Randall Cobb is just a guy at this point. He was once special there playing off Jordy Nelson for Aaron Rodgers, but Doubs has all the opportunity here to do damage here in this Packers passing game. I think they're going to rev up here. It's a good matchup this week against the Patriots secondary. So I think you'll see this passing game with Aaron Rodgers come alive. We said be patient with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers was a little bit ahead of that. He's had 2 multiple touchdown games here in weeks 2 and week 3. We want to see a little bit more passing volume. I don't know if you'll get that. The Packers are 10.5-point favorites at home against Brian Hoyer's Patriots. So looks like another walkover, but the Patriots will try to stop the run, force them to pass. Rodgers, we know it, Lambeau brings it here. So Romeo Doubs and El Lazard looking in good spots here as clearly the 1-1A receivers here for Green Bay post Devontae Adams, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, with all the issues surrounding Watkins and Watson. Excuse me. All right, we'll go to Tampa Bay from Green Bay, and Russell Gage on the other side of Doubs also had a big game, catching all the key targets from Tom Brady. He ends up with the touchdown reception as well late in the game. They couldn't quite tie it there. The 2-point conversion failed when they had the penalty and moved them back. But Russell Gage, a 12-catch performance there. I know Mike Evans missed the game with a suspension. You didn't have Chris Godwin with the hamstring. There's a chance that Julio Jones returns with a knee injury. But however you look at it, Gage is going to be a key number 2 target here behind Mike Evans. They haven't got tight ends as involved here in this offense. And again, Gage, remember, he was a priority free agent signing. They wanted to get him in there as kind of the replacement to Antonio Brown. Jones was kind of a late camp thought here when they had a few injury issues and needed to get depth here. They mixed things up with Tyler Johnson being put on the move here. And they went with Jalen Darden and Scotty Miller and Brashad Perryman. So they were looking for depth with Jones. I think Gage and that performance with Brady is going to earn him some more key looks here. And keep in mind, Gage was very productive when Calvin Ridley wasn't there for the Falcons. That's what the Buccaneers saw, the versatility inside, outside, that they could use him in the scheme here. So Russell Gage should get more opportunities here after that great performance there in the losing cause against Doubs and Green Bay. Now, Josh Palmer, we're going to watch the value here of Keenan Allen. He may return this week against the Texans, but Josh Palmer really 2 solid games in a row, scored in week 2 against the Chiefs, but also had a 99-yard game there. I get it, Allen missed the game again, but Jalen Guyton is now down. This team can support 3 receivers. We'll see between him and the tight end Gerald Everett, who gets a few more looks. But Palmer, I know Justin Herbert's been talking him up. So now you're getting what we're seeing from Palmer, that talent there as the heir apparent to Allen. And Allen, that age and attrition is starting to hit him opposite Mike Williams. So Palmer getting a little bit more opportunity. We'll watch the Allen injury here, but really like that situation with Palmer. So really developing here to be a key target in this pass-happy Chargers attack as they're not being able to run the ball efficiently at all. Zay Jones comes up on the list. Now, he's the underrated guy that they signed in Jacksonville. Christian Kirk, the big splash guy, and he's lived up to the contract so far with the way they're using him as a number 1. But Zay Jones is a little bit ahead of Marvin Jones. He had 10 receptions last week. This is a game where the Jaguars were leading and pulled away. So that's not going to stop here. You look at Christian Kirk, make little Darius big play Slay this week in Philadelphia. That would open things up for the Joneses, Zay and Marvin Jr., but do like Zay a little bit more involved. So another underrated guy that's moved on from another team. He was with the Bills and Raiders, and now he's having a good role here with the Jaguars. So credit the Jaguars. When we saw them go after Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, like these are the guys they want to roll with. But Doug Peterson, credit him, knowing what Trevor Lawrence could be effective with, knowing their passing game with Press Taylor. So that's what you're seeing here, the arrival of Christian Kirk and Zay Jones in this Jaguars passing game. It all ties into the way Trevor Lawrence is playing quarterback as well. Greg Dortch still having key role here for the Cardinals, and now A.J. Green is hurting. So we know DeAndre Hopkins is already suspended, but Dortch really a factor here in the passing game, been rather consistent as a target for Kyler Murray. There's really not much else when you break it down here after Marquise Brown and the tight end Zach Ertz. So Dortch really in the top 3 of the targets now for the Cardinals, especially with the Green injury. So, yeah, he's still going to bring it. I like him more in halfway in full PPR leagues. He's not going to blow up, not necessarily going to get a touchdown for you, but Dortch definitely should be taken and rostered in 12-team leagues at this point. Isaiah McKenzie, I think he's still a deeper league play, but the concern is the Gabe Davis ankle injury. I don't know if he's fully healthy here, so they need a little bit more run with McKenzie playing off Stephon Diggs. McKenzie with a nice big game against the Dolphins. They get the Ravens secondary this week, so the attention figures to be on Diggs, but they play his own coverage, so McKenzie could beat that a little bit, especially if one Gabe Davis is not at fully 100%. You can look at Treylon Burks. Robert Woods really emerged there for the Titans as a key target. They've been waiting for that, but Burks is still involved. The rookie from Arkansas, the first-round pick. So he's going to get more opportunities as this Titans passing game gets a little bit more whole around Ryan Tannehill. Now, at some point, I think George Pickens is going to show up and have a bigger role. Could it be this week with the mini bye there as the Steelers play the Jets? We're going to watch that. I don't think we'll see Kenny Pickett for a while still. So Mitchell Trubisky is going to have to get the ball to Pickens, but that one-handed circus catch highlight reel against the Browns, maybe that'll get him a few more opportunities. So Pickens, we're going to wait and see and hope that his role can expand here in favor of the fade of Chase Claypool, is what we need to happen at the same time. Michael Gallup could return to a more dynamic Cowboys passing game. Now, Dalton Schultz couldn't play there on Monday night in week 3, but we saw Noah Brown continue to play very well, playing off CeeDee Lamb. But Gallup could give them another weapon just in time for Dak Prescott potentially returning as early as week 5 against the Rams, could be week 6 against the Eagles. I think they'll be careful with him week 4 against the Commanders, but Gallup could have immediate value there in that really great matchup with that Commanders secondary here in week 4 if he can return. He was pretty close to returning. We'll see. It's a short week to turn around, and they may hold him as well and get him fully healed for when Dak can possibly return in week 5. Marquez Valdes-Scantling getting consistent targets. The Chiefs really need to stretch the field and have that deep threat. Juju Smith-Schuster made a big play last week, but they struggled to finish the Colts and then put up some points. So maybe MVS will get some opportunities here with Sky Moore. We'll see how that plays out with the Chiefs offense. They do get the Bucks this week, so not the easiest spot to go deep on against the Bucks, but MVS, if he keeps getting those targets, there will be some production to come in the big play realm here pretty soon. Mac Hollins, we'll have to see the status of Hunter Renfrow. He's only playable if Renfrow doesn't go. We know Renfrow is Derek Carr's guy. They play the Broncos this week, so it's a tough matchup with Pat Surtain in that secondary. So don't chase the points with Mac Hollins, especially if Renfrow returns there opposite Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. DJ Chark, not a bad deep pickup there. You also have Josh Reynolds from the Lions. His Lions passing game was pretty good. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a little bit banged up in that game against the Vikings last week. So we'll watch that. I think he'll be okay to play. But Chark and Reynolds essentially are the outside guys here with Jameson Williams on the radar. So I think Williams is going to have the higher upside when he starts here, the rookie from Alabama, and can get on the field. But for now, it's between Chark and Reynolds of deep leagues. The Reynolds had the better production last week. Chark had the better start. Again, deeper leagues, you can look at either one of those guys if St. Brown is a little bit limited here. We know that Jared Goff has good chemistry with Reynolds going back to the Rams, and Chark had some good production there with the Jaguars before he came over. Devontae Parker, buyer beware on him. We saw Nelson Aguilar as the guy go off there in week 2. Jacoby Myers could return here from the knee injury. We'll watch that. But it's also a quarterback downgrade here to Brian Hoyer, so I'm not expecting a lot from that passing game of the Patriots with the takeover with Hoyer or the rookie Bailey Zappi, however they play it here with Mac Jones missing multiple weeks. So fading that entire passing game because of that quarterback situation. And KJ Osborne, remember him? We were thinking about him being a key third target there. If Adam Thielen continues to fade, well, Thielen got back in the end zone in week 3, looked active again, like he came alive. So we'll see. But Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen still the top targets there, but they've been trying to work on other guys, including the tight ends, Irv Smith and Johnny Munt and Ellefson as well. So we'll see how it goes. But Osborne, again, deeper league suggestion only there in 14-teamers and more of a standard pickup because I don't think he's going to get a lot of volume there in relation to the other guys. Now, we will get into the running backs and tight ends to target on the waiver wire in our next segment, then close looking at quarterbacks and streaming defenses here for week number 4. Before we do that, I told you at the top that this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks, and you can see that promo code there. Locked On is going to be what you want to use there to take advantage of a special offer that I will tell you about at PrizePicks. It's really fun because you can just go after the projections and see if you can beat the projections or look at going below those projections. However you break it down, this is what you're trying to do, and you're trying to hit the PrizePicks projections available and figure out what you're going to do there. It's a lot of fun, easy to play, very simple. All you do is pick 2 to 5 players, and they will go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. Of course, that includes NFL, but NBA is going to be starting soon. MLB in full swing here. Stretch run. NHL is going to drop the puck PJ, college football, we know is right here. College basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and a lot more. Yep. You can play PrizePicks with basically any sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in more than 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On and sign up for instant deposit match up to $100 only at PrizePicks and PrizePicks.com. All right, it is time to continue the show looking at the Week 4 waiver wire here on Locked On Fantasy Football. All right, there were some big injuries that happened at running back that we want to address here with the waiver wire suggestions. Now, Khalil Herbert, in a lot of shallower leagues, based on Herbert's production the first couple weeks, he was going to be hard to get here on that scene, especially as a high-end handcuff to Dave Montgomery. We talked about all summer, preseason long, here on Locked On Fantasy Football, how we liked Khalil Herbert as a later pick versus Dave Montgomery as a forced RB2 pick. Well, here we are. Dave Montgomery, knee and ankle injuries. I think he'll at least miss some time here, but Herbert has been the better back regardless. He's had more juice. He's been explosive. He's been great in the red zone. Or Khalil Herbert has been the better back except for week 2 there where Montgomery went for more than 100 yards. But Herbert, weeks 1, week 3, really smashed it here. Looked awesome against the 49ers, and then did it again there last week against the Texans. So Khalil Herbert, a real good prediction to produce, especially with Montgomery down here. Now they have a kid named Ebner that they'll give the ball to a little bit behind Herbert, but still he's going to get the bulk of the touches probably here in that pretty good matchup against the Giants, who just got gashed by the combination of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. So Khalil Herbert in a great position to produce here without Monty in New York. Alexander Mattison, he's been up and down there filling in for Dalvin Cook in the past. We'll see if Dalvin can go. He's supposed to try to play this week with a shoulder injury. They're not totally ruling him out, but he might have to play with a harness. That might not be worth the risk, especially because they're traveling to London. The Vikings may be erring on the side of caution here and going with Mattison in this game. So we'll watch that for sure. Alexander Mattison should get key touches here. They can also scale back Cook's workload where Mattison is a lead guy. This one, they don't always do that with these guys, and they tend to just sit Cook here. They've done that with a different coaching staff, so it might change with Kevin O'Connell versus the Kubiaks and what they had before. So let's watch that with Cook versus Mattison. And he wasn't totally ruled out. I think if he is ruled out, Mattison makes for a fine play, even in what can be a tough matchup against that Saints defense. Now, Jaylen Warren, I think they're going to give him a little bit more run in Pittsburgh to take pressure off Najee Harris. So if he's still out there, he's at least a plus handcuff for you. If not, he's a guy that may have some standalone value if they get him a little bit more involved here behind Harris. We'll watch that. Typically, Mike Tomlin and their offenses have been a one-back scheme, but Warren definitely, again, at worst, a pretty nice number 2. Could be out of sight, out of mind for some people. So he could be sitting there available to insure Harris or pull yourself a lottery ticket, even if you don't have Harris. Now, we can look at Craig Reynolds. So this is the other Reynolds in Detroit. We have Josh Reynolds and Craig Reynolds that you're going to look at. Reynolds might have significantly higher volume here playing off Jamal Williams with DeAndre Swift, potentially going to miss up to 3 games here. So we'll watch that with Swift being out. I would say they go on the side of caution here because Williams has played so well. So don't be surprised if Craig Reynolds gets some key touches here. I know Cordell Patterson's looked great, but he's older. He's taking some more hits. Tyler Algier is still getting some good work behind him, the rookie from BYU. So watch for him as a nice handcuff if you got Patterson for the Falcons. James Cook got a little bit more run in week 2 when they blew out the Titans. The Bills did. He was involved in the passing game in that role that we expected a little bit more of in week 3 against the Dolphins. But James Cook, again, he has that potential to take over this backfield should something happen to Devin Singletary here. I think they would turn to him more than Zach Moss because Cook has higher upside and better receiving skills here. So watch out for him. At least he's a plus handcuff to Singletary if he's out there in your leagues. Brian Robinson Jr., again, this is a speculation. We told you all along that, again, just like taking Khalil Herbert later versus Dave Montgomery earlier, I liked taking Brian Robinson Jr. a flyer on him versus forcing an RB2 pick on Antonio Gibson. Gibson had a hot start, but we've seen him really slow down, be a bit touchdown dependent here of late. Robinson can steal those touchdowns. He's a power back there out of Alabama. So something to watch because Gibson is just not getting the job done with the production rushing wise if they don't get the ball in his hands in the passing game. So J.D. McKissick has that role. So don't be surprised Brian Robinson Jr. soon has a big role. And Gus Edwards is another guy you can look at here. Stash him potentially. If you got an IR spot, he's still on the physically unable to perform list, so you can do that and hope that he'll have a key role coming back because really no one has really stepped up here. And you have J.K. Dobbins healthier. I think you'll see that Dobbins-Edwards mix kind of restore itself in Baltimore with all these replacements struggling, with the exception of a few flashes from Justice Hill. All right, at tight end, David Njoku is the man here that you're looking at. Finally, he got going. He was the hot sleeper before the season. We were worried about Harrison Bryant in the first 2 weeks, but Njoku really establishing himself as a key target there for Jacoby Brissett. Love the matchup this week against the Falcons. The Falcons cannot cover the tight end at all. You'll have A.J. Terrell probably locked up and trying to shine down Amari Cooper. So it's going to open the middle of the field for David Njoku playing off Nick Chubb in that running game. Tyler Conklin, a little bit of a connection between these two guys. Njoku was in the Kevin Stefanski system. Conklin came from that with the Vikings from a couple of years ago, had a nice season last year. Now he's asserting himself with the Jets, looking really good here. CJ Uzomah has been more of the blocking tight end. He's also missed a game there with an injury. So Conklin really becoming a key part of this pass game as the Jets are throwing a ton all over the field to the receivers, to Breece Hall out of the backfield, Michael Carter at times, and Conklin being involved. Big targets here last week, caught all 8. He scored in the previous game as well. So looking at Conklin, he definitely has good value in the shaky tight end landscape beyond the elites there in Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and Kyle Pitts. Cole Kmet, if he's out there and someone's dropped him, I think he could have a bigger role here. 3 targets only last week, but 3 targets in relation to how much the Bears are throwing is quite a bit. He had 2 catches for 40, so that tells you what Kmet can do if they can get him going here with Justin Fields. Now, this matchup against the Giants is not bad. They allowed the backup Cowboys tight ends there, Peyton Hendershot and Jake Ferguson, to do some damage there. So I think it's not terrible to get Cole Kmet involved here. And again, someone would have dropped him pretty quickly, stash him as a tight end too with some upside. Same thing with Robert Tonyan here. The targets came in weeks 1 and 3. I think the touchdowns will come here pretty soon. I think you're having your 3 guys that they're going to trust most in Green Bay. Romeo Doubs and Al Lazard and Robert Tonyan are going to be the key targets here when they're not looking to Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon. So look for Tonyan to expand a little bit touchdown dependent, but I would say he's a little bit touchdown overdue here. And the Patriots have not covered the tight end well at all. Mark Andrews did score twice against them in week 3. Cameron Brate getting a little bit more run, had the 5 receptions this week. First 2 weeks, he was an afterthought, but they had some wide receiver injuries, so Brate got involved a little bit more. And hey, they should throw to Brate a little bit more. He's pretty good in the red zone. We've seen the big numbers he's put in the past up there with Jameis Winston. There was good chemistry between him and Tom Brady till Rob Gronkowski came along, kind of killed Brate's value. But I think Gronk's absence might remind Brady that he's got to throw to the tight end a little bit more. And Brate, again, like Tonyan, overdue for finding a red zone look for a touchdown there as an option. So touchdown dependent, that's a lot of these tight ends that aren't getting the ball as key receiving supplements in their offense. So keep that in mind. That's something you're going to have to accept here. You got to stream looking for some scores there in particular matchups. All right, we will get into our quarterbacks and streaming defense recommendations here in our final segment here on a Pickup Tuesday, waiver wire look and advice here from Locked On Fantasy Football. Make sure you're checking out all the great shows here on the Locked On Network. Our Team by Team podcast also have a special for you where they cross over and break down the games. Our hosts of different shows, such as Locked On Patriots, Locked On Ravens. Here, cross up that on your list is something you should watch. Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends at PrizePicks. There, check it out there. So, Crossover Thursday, really good shows to break down the upcoming games, as well as this show, Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On NFL on the network. So a lot of good stuff here to carry you through the reality in fantasy football season on Locked On. All right, it is time to close the show looking at our quarterbacks and defensive recommendations on the waiver wire this week. This is the last call for Jared Goff. I mean, he's tied to this Lions offense that's very special here with these weapons. We talked about Chark and Reynolds, and we got Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got Jameson Williams back on the way here. TJ Hawkinson got in the end zone. So Goff has got some weapons here to throw to. Even with DeAndre Swift down, that can actually prompt them to put the ball up a little bit more. Great matchup this week against the Seahawks at home. Doesn't get much better than that. So Goff knows the Seahawks well from his time with the Rams in the NFC West. So great matchup there for Jared Goff. Last call probably for him to get on your rosters. He should definitely be starting all QB2 Superflex concepts here in deeper leagues. Goff is looking very good here. Marcus Mariota also putting up some numbers for Falcons. So these guys, these former high first-round picks, kind of redemption story for them. Mariota, great matchup against the Cleveland secondary this week. The guys, Drake London and Kyle Pitts coming through for him. So Mariota producing more than expected. He's also a threat to score on the ground every week. So love that as an option as well if you're hurting at quarterback. Still, Jameis Winston, it's not always pretty with him, but he's putting the ball up in the air quite a bit. They're getting aggressive in the downfield passing game. It's his kind of offensive thing with Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry hurt. Alvin Kamara not running all that much. So Winston, the Saints defense, not as good as we think. So could be some volume-based production here opposite Kirk Cousins and the Vikings this week. Jimmy Garoppolo, don't love him against the Rams this week in that front, especially with no Trent Williams, but he's going to have some value at some point. He's just got too much there with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. So not bad if somebody overreacts to the Broncos game and drops him and not going to play him against the Rams. He's a good backup stash and maybe a bye-week replacement there, depending on the particular matchup he has when your QB is off. Now, Brian Hoyer you can look at. I'm not going to go after it. I'd be more interested in Bailey Zappi. Had a spot here because he's younger, can spread the ball around. But Brian Hoyer is not going to give you too much. He's going to be a caretaker, facilitate the running game for the most part. And we know this receiving core at tight end and wide receiver has been a mixed bag for the Patriots. Finally, we'll look at the streaming defenses of the week. I got to recommend two in the same game. That's the Giants and the Bears. The Bears really came through pretty well against the Texans last week. The Giants, pretty solid game against the Cowboys until the late work of the fourth quarter. But the Giants are playing Justin Fields this week, so that's great. The Bears are playing Daniel Jones this week, so that's great. So exploit that. It's going to be a low-scoring game there in the Meadowlands. The over-under is 39, so some good pass rushers, opportunity for sacks, some weak pass-protecting offensive lines there, and mistake-prone quarterbacks that you can look at. So Bears-Giants game, good place to target for defensive points. The Colts look a little bit better defensively. They tend to play better at home overall. That's what we saw weeks 1 and 2. They were on the road, had the bad tie, bad loss. They went home and had the exceptional win over the Chiefs. So Colts play a little bit better. Maybe you'll get a little Shaquille Leonard back in the lineup to help them as well. We also have the Minnesota Vikings. They get Jameis Winston and the Saints. We know the Saints are mistake-prone at this point with Winston, so that's a good play in London there. So make sure you pick them up before Sunday morning because they'll be kicking off at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time in New Orleans. You can also look at the other side against Kirk Cousins. I don't think it counts technically as a primetime game. It's a more of a mid-afternoon game. London games are different and weird, and they feel like the primetime games, but Kirk Cousins, again, up and down. So you could look at the Saints in that same game as well, but I prefer the Vikings against Winston, the turnover machine. And the Panthers were very helpful last week. I don't know if they'll be all that effective there against the Cardinals, but I do like the Cardinals defense. J.J. Watt is getting going here. They got some playmakers we know on the back end that can force things out there with the Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. So there's a chance for turnovers every time Baker Mayfield's always on the field. So another good streaming defense. So we have the Giants and Bears, Colts, Vikings. If the Saints are available, you can look at them in your leagues if it's more of a shell league. And then you could also target the Cardinals here against Baker Mayfield on the Panthers, even though that game is on the road. All right, there you have it. There's a breakdown of the waiver wire here for week 4 on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Don't forget, our next episode, we'll be breaking out the matchups. When we do it, start it sit style there with the quarterbacks and running backs. So we'll focus on those best plays for you on the show. So we'll look at the week 4 schedule, look ahead, and break down the best matchups for your quarterbacks and running backs, the guys that will help you win and lose your matchups this week. So we'll follow that for sure on Locked On Fantasy Football as we do a different edition of Matchup Wednesday, Matchup Thursday. Thursday, we'll break it down from the perspective of the other positions, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses. Now, make your second listen to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the latest Expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes, and free and available wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Good luck in all your waiver wire claims and fab budget requests, and we'll check you out tomorrow breaking down the games there for quarterbacks and running backs in week number 4.